Please welcome Alexander Demetrius to the show. Welcome, Alexander.
Aloha, everyone. Thank you for having
Aloha.
me.
You're so welcome. Thank you for being here from Oahu. And, I've met you through Instagram and I look at, you know, how paths cross, and I always know there's a reason. And, and then I just started like listening to your videos and going, wow, this guy like deep, like almost where like a philosopher, like that's your handle on Instagram. And you are that, and you have this way of looking at life in a way in like a it's such a reflective way, and in a way that really resonates with me, I guess is my point. But you have a story, and I'd love for you to share who you are, how you got to be at this place in Oahu. But I know I look back at it as like, I think the gift of your journey was the soul connection with your mother, and
Yeah,
what
absolutely.
her gift was to you in this life. And what I look at it always from the higher perspective of, your soul agreement with your mom, like what she chose to be for you in this lifetime. That's kind of how I assessed your, your soul's, being on this planet right now. So with that being said, would you want to take us to wherever you want to take us to begin explaining like your journey and where you have been and now where you are?
Well, I think that starting with my mother would be the ideal place because everything begins with our mothers. They are the first individual we come into contact with when we're born into this world. And it, it was very beautiful the way you described the conscious relationship of, let's say, soul contracts between my mother and I. That's the realization I have now. That wasn't the realization I had when I was going through it. But that's the beauty of life is I've come to the conclusion that this world is not a place for good or evil. It's a place for good and evil, as these two forces that support one another and help each other to grow. You can imagine the yin yang symbol of the black fish with the white eye in it, and the white fish with the black eye in it. That's how they can relate to one another. And you can't relate to anything that you are not yourself participating in. And so I was born in San Antonio, Texas, to a mother who was suffering from multiple personality disorder or dissociative identity disorder. And at the time, there was not much known about this disorder. There was a series of doctors she would see that would misdiagnose her as bipolar or schizophrenic. And she would go to the University of Texas to see a psychologist who at least had one tool in his tool belt, which was hypnosis. And he would utilize hypnosis to uh, communicate with these different personalities that would come through my mother. And these personalities were the result of my mother having abuse from her own mother growing up.
Hmm.
And that is how multiple personalities tend to split the mind. Whenever the mind is confronted by something so overwhelming, it will divide itself so that there are, you might say, personalities that can adjust and adapt to whatever
Oh, okay.
chaos is
Huh.
is occurring. So I see it as a testament to the intelligence and the genius of the human psyche to be able to do that. But growing up with her was a real challenge, and uh, I the household was in a constant state of chaos and tension. As you can imagine, if you can come home to, or imagine your daughter is coming home to you, but she doesn't know who she's going to come
Right.
home to,
Huh.
and that's what I faced every day.
Did you have a
And
dad there too, and brothers and
no,
sisters? Okay, just your mom.
no, just my mom and I.
Okay.
Yeah, I had an older I think I have an older brother who I grew up with for a short period of time in my life. But as soon as he got old enough, he moved away and never came
Oh,
back. So
wow.
essentially, the load was left on my shoulders. And I'm very grateful for that as well, because that has um, afflicted and guided me to where I am now, mentally, spiritually. Especially, it's given me the gumption to want to share my experiences with other people so that they can find their true calling and also have some insights on how they can work through a lot of the dynamics of discovering yourself and discovering your path and dealing with inner demons and transmuting all of that. So, long story less boring. I now am in Hawaii, bound for California. But as a kid, there was a show called The Jeffersons,
I
and in it,
remember. Oh, I
yeah,
love that show.
yes. Well, there was a series episode where
How old are
they.
you? What are we the same age?
I'm 48.
Oh, no, I'm
Oh,
54, so I'm older.
oh, we're all timeless anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
But in this series, the Jeffersons go to this place called Hawaii. Now, I'm a little kid watching this. I've never heard of Hawaii, been there. But George Jefferson is this uptight character who's always focused on business and money and inflating his place in the world. And when he arrives in Hawaii, because I believe they're in New York, perhaps, when they arrive in Hawaii, something happens to this character where he is transformed into somebody who's relaxed, who puts down his briefcase for the first time and is just sitting on a beach. And that really
Huh.
impacted me because I thought, wow, wherever this place is, if it could do that to George Jefferson, then it could potentially do that to me, because I was living in a state of heightened awareness, nervousness, anxiety, because that's what I had to contend with every day.
Right.
And so, with anybody who's suffering, you're always on the lookout for some form of relief. And so, it wouldn't be until probably 20 years later, perhaps, maybe 15, that I actually had the opportunity to move to Hawaii. But before I get into that, I used to make this joke to myself because I would say my mom should open a travel agency where they specialize in guilt trips because
Oh, I love
uh,
it.
yeah, as her right hand and the only source of real help and compassion in her life, understandably so, she would not want me to go anywhere.
Right.
At the same time, though, there was also this, well, let's call it a force or influence of which I could not control or even understand, that was calling me to move beyond my comfort zone. And so, one of the things that I was always attracted to was Hollywood, because it was ironically my mother who introduced me into the storytelling power of movies and their ability to teach. And every time we would go to a movie as a form of escape, uh, as soon as the credits would roll, my mom would turn to me and say, "What was the point or the meaning or the lesson in that story?" And so that became my fascination with this empire where people could become different people, and you'd see the same actor but in a different role and a totally different energy. And I was like, I want to be a part of that. So
Oh, I love it.
yeah, as I grew up, I started getting the courage to toy with the idea of moving to Hollywood. And I thought, well, I'm a okay looking fellow, and I think I have talent. Who doesn't think that? And so when I arrived in Hollywood, I found out everybody's good looking. Everybody has talents, and it was very easy to get lost in the shuffle. So when I finally left my home in San Antonio and my mother behind, guilt trips and all, I attempted to pursue a career in acting and everything that comes along with that. And I was there for about 7 years. the whole while I'm still in dialogue with my mom. I even would drive from LA to San Antonio, like every time there was a crisis, which was quite often, put the fire out and come back into the other den of lions in Los Angeles. So, but one time I just was at a rock bottom point in LA as far as money and career went. So a friend of mine suggested I sign up with an agency that puts people in domestic positions like nannies, butlers, etc. Signed up with this agency, and sure enough, I got a series of interviews. One, in fact, was for George Harrison's widow, and I got to interview in George Harrison's Brentwood house.
Oh,
And there was
fun.
all of this memorabilia of this amazing individual. I didn't get the gig though, which made sense. They could tell I was young and eager and want to conquer the world, and they just want somebody who can show up consistently and cut the grass and help out.
Oh, right.
So that wasn't going to be me. But then another opportunity came, and I was told there's this individual built a house or rather a mansion on the beachfront in Hawaii. He needs somebody with your skill set to live on the property and take care of everything. I was like, wow, there was my window of opportunity that opened up a door to a passage that I had first come into contact with as a child. So that to me is evidence of the universe always conspiring on our side to say, okay, here's this invitation, here's this potential or possibility for your life to change. You are so devoted to it, to finding that peace. We're going to make it happen. And sure enough, I went off I left Hollywood behind, went over to Hawaii. And the first day I woke up after a long trip from LA, I felt this overwhelming peace that surrounded me and enfolded me from the environment. I'd never felt anything like this
Hmm.
before. And that said, this is where I belong. Now, of course, Hawaii can be challenging financially when you're just starting out and whatnot. So I only stayed there for, I think it was 6 years, perhaps 7.
Oh, wow. That's a
But
long time.
yeah, but in that time, I had this notion for a book. And I remember it was 2009. I was laying in bed and I just could not sleep. And I just said to myself, okay. And what I was saying okay to was this nagging uh, audio recording, you might call it, that just would not stop telling me to put something on paper, to, write my story. So I think it was around midnight, and I just got up and just started cranking out something. I'd never written a book before, but I'd always enjoyed the process of writing. And then before I knew it, I had a paragraph, and that paragraph became several paragraphs, and then the idea for a whole chapter started to fuse together. And so I, over a series of about 3 years, wrote this book and was so desperate to get my name out there and be discovered and show the world, look at this magnificent thing I just created. It's going
Right.
to change your life. That I failed to put in the proper steps of rereading it, making sure all the edits are correct. In fact, I would even hand it off to other individuals who really didn't have an interest in it, but just said they would do things. And because I didn't get notes back, I thought, well, it must be great. Well, the reality was they just didn't have time for it.
Oh,
So,
oh, funny.
but I have had several mentors in my life who have said, entrepreneurs and artists are people, the kind of people who are willing to stick their neck out. And so I was willing to stick my neck out because I might fail, but at least I will learn from that failure. So I garnered enough money to self-publish my book, and it came out, I believe, in 2012, 2013. What this allowed me to do was to put it out in the marketplace as is, find out what it feels like to promote it, talk about it, give it away, sell it, and see if people would give feedback or if it changed anybody's life. And so over the years, this really was the most beneficial thing I could do, because it gave me inspiration to, okay, if this many people resonate with it, how can I make it better so that a broader audience can resonate with it? And it wasn't until 10 years later, almost to the day, that I finally put all the other distractions aside and said, I'm going to get the manuscript back from the publishing company and edit it. So that's what I've been doing for the past, let's say, couple of months.
Hmm.
But I can see in it the level of desperation I had, because I could see, I thought I only had three, what do you call it, mistakes, edit, literary mistakes in
Right.
the book. Turns out there's a slew of them, spelling errors and paragraphs where I said this thing here, and then a paragraph and a half later, I say the same thing in almost a different way.
Oh, funny.
Um, and there's an expression with artists where we are encouraged to kill your babies, because a baby is a creation of yours. And
Hmm.
so if you are not willing to delete paragraphs and adapt new ideas that can make something better, then you're kind of stuck. But if you are willing to sacrifice those things, there are that leaves a vacuum open for new things to come through. And so that's why I'm really enjoying the editing process now, because it is just giving me almost time a moment of frozen time where I can look and reflect on my own thinking, my own habits, my own let's call it um, just myself,
Right.
in a very deep way. And so I returned back to Hawaii because I had the opportunity to again work for a wealthy individual who needed me in the same kind of capacity. Essentially, I've lived the life of a tramp. And well, if you've watched the movie Into the Wild, he refers to himself as a super tramp,
Right.
someone who travels from place to place, but works so they can have they can offset the cost of housing and food. And that's what I learned growing up. I had to be the man of the house. I had to learn plumbing, electrical, carpentry, and all of these things were skills that I could put on my back and take anywhere. And it's funny, I have yet to own a house of my own furniture. I still
Oh,
have a
wow.
backpack. Yeah, because that lifestyle has allowed me the freedom that I would otherwise not have if I were committed to a mortgage and a career
Right.
and all of these things that a lot of times we are looking to distract ourselves from asking the real questions of, why am I really here? What is this all about? And it's not to degrade anyone's experience who is doing that, because I'm certainly headed that way myself. But in the meantime, it's given me the freedom to say, who would I like to be around or surround myself with? And so, because I've had these skills of being a handyman of sorts, my mom always encouraged me to hang around people of influence, of wealth, of abundance, because you're going to learn from them, even if you're not being paid for it. So that's what I would do. I would always find opportunities where there was an opening to be in the presence of somebody that I thought was great.
Huh.
And each time I would gain far more than my paycheck was reflecting.
Right.
I've heard this analogy where United States Marines have two incomes. They have the income that they earn from doing their due diligence and their duty to their country. But then they also have this second income or form of abundance, which is in the sense of brotherhood, the sense of family, the sense that your fellow Marines will never leave you behind. All of that is currency that adds value to you as an individual operating in the form of a component that belongs to a larger organism
Right.
called the United States Marine Corps. So the same,
Thanks. Yes,
Uh,
but when you talk about like your the book and it's called The Reward of Not Knowing.
Correct.
That's your book. And
Yes.
you always are referencing Joseph Campbell, The
Yes.
Hero's Journey. Will you explain that, why you look at your life? Do you look at your life? Because I didn't realize Joseph Campbell's lived in Oahu.
I didn't either until I moved here, actually.
Yeah, like wow, he is your biggest mentor, lived where you live. But when
Yeah.
I've interviewed people, we talk about the hero's journey a lot, and then I'm listening to you or your the things that have driven you to do what you do and write your book. But why Joseph Campbell, and why that for you? Why that theme in your life?
Again, that ties back to my mother, where everything starts. In her own search for answers, she would go to public library, or she was always in bookstores looking for answers. And one day at the library, somebody turned in a series of a VHS cassette that my mom asked, "What's that?" And they said, "Joseph Campbell. It's a series called The Power of Myth with Bill Moyer." So she checked it out and went home and played it. And as she was watching it, I couldn't help but be drawn in because Joseph Campbell had this voice that was almost felt like a grandfatherly presence.
Mm-hmm.
And he had all of these stories that I knew he was trying to tell me something. I just didn't know what, but his energy was such that it didn't matter. I was just became glued to that series. And then over time, she would replay it over and over again. And then I was always there. Well, when I moved to Hollywood, and especially when I was at a rock bottom financially, all I had was just my laptop and this series that I ended up buying myself to rewatch over and over again. And then suddenly just the light bulb clicked, the floodgates were open, and I truly got the message of what Joseph Campbell meant when he said, "Follow your bliss." Because when you do, doors will open where none have been before.
Mm.
And I could see from a very practical standpoint that this "follow your bliss" wasn't just some flight of fancy saying, but it was a real applicable statement that could guide my journey towards a more fulfilling experience of life.
But when
So,
you're at that, like when you're at the rock bottom and you're,
mhm,
listening to these tapes and you're like, oh yeah, follow my bliss. Well, are you thinking, I have been like, I think you were like, went to Hollywood, you left your mom, you were really do you feel like you were resonating with that? Cause that's really, I feel like just listening to you say that, like, I would say, Alexander, you were following your bliss because you were wanting to be an actor. Like, I always say people, you have that inspired thought, those thoughts that are in your head. And so
mhm.
many people ignore them, or, the fear comes, or, there's some block, this roadblock that they've created to believe that it's true, but there are no blocks. We only create our own blocks. But I feel like that's where I want you to go. Like, why did that ring a bell? Like, why did that light bulb go off when you heard follow your bliss? Yes, that's it.
As well, because it goes back to the way I felt when I saw George Jefferson, Hawaii. That gave me a sense that was so polar opposite of all the chaos I was surrounded by. And then once Joseph Campbell was added to the mix, and I would hear him say, "Follow your bliss," that I think just sunk in to my psyche, and then just started becoming the guiding principle, whether I knew it or not. Because I first saw Joseph Campbell when I was probably 10 years old,
Huh.
11, something like that. So how can I actually say, well, I took that and I ran with it? I didn't, but the whole time that was laying within me, almost dormant, but still starting to grow and influence my actions. So I can unequivocally, without a doubt, say that because of that, his influence, that ultimately did give me the courage to look my mother in the eye with all my compassion and kindness and say, I have to do this, because it's anything other than that just felt like death to me.
Right.
And I could not foresee a future for myself or even for her or my ability to even take care of her had I stayed in that environment.
Right.
So yes, that definitely follow your bliss came to me when I was very young, and then really just um, influenced me, all of my actions
When
thereafter.
when you write your book and you name it The Reward of Not Knowing, so the reward of not knowing. I
Mhm.
love that because in my life, and I always say this when I'm, in to people I'm interviewing or in my life, every time I've done something in the not knowing and I've just trusted and gone, and I always say the word surrender or, trust, that's when the reward is just unimaginable, right? Like this is why I'm so passionate about when there is that voice or there is that that follow your bliss, or you did listen to Joseph Campbell and there was a message there. There's no accident at the library that your mom found those tapes and had this whole follow the breadcrumbs. I'm like, yeah, there's definitely this from the higher perspective, watching Alexander grow at 10, going, okay, I'm going to place these tapes in his life. He's going to get this, he's going to hear this message. It's going to resonate with him and he's going to stick with him until throughout his life. And then he's going to watch the Jefferson. I mean, he's going to see this contrast of, this is how life can be, but really this is the other side of life. Like it doesn't always have to be like that. But when I look at the reward of not knowing, and I think that's an amazing title. I would buy that book. I will buy that book. um, but so explain that to me, that title.
In my experience, when I would set goals in front of myself, and in the aspiration of those, I would find that achieving the goal, it seemed to get farther and farther away. That is when it dawned on me, the journey is the goal. And so for me to leave San Antonio to go to Hollywood that I did not know about, you're essentially crossing a threshold into the unknown. And this ties in perfectly with Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. What the hero's journey is a sequence of events that any would-be hero or heroine experiences once they attempt to achieve something beyond their normal scope of achievement and knowledge. And so you have departure. That's the first step. You depart from the world of light into the world of darkness. And in order to do that, you have to cross a threshold. It could be your front door, it could be the border of your city, it could be your country. But you're crossing this line of familiarity into the line of unfamiliarity. And the moment you do that, you are immediately met by mentors and guides who seemingly evoke qualities that are even peculiar to yourself. And once you hone these qualities and give them their proper place in your life, then you are able to, the hero, then you might say the next phase of the journey, departure, crossing a threshold, fulfillment of your cup, your own grail, you might call it. You then share the boons of your experiences, all the golden nuggets from what life has brought forth from you with others so that they can go on their own journey to find their true north. And that is the basis of my book. Uh, Departure, fulfillment, and return. It's a cycle. And it occurs in daily life, whether you're going hunting or work, you leave one place, go on your journey and come back to that place. The cycle of time, it's the same day, or the same hour, but a different day. We're about to have Christmas again and Thanksgiving again. When an eagle builds its nest, it's in a circle. When you look at the horizon, it's in a circle. So this is a dynamic that is very much real in everyone's life. So you might say that all humanity has this hero dynamic automatically within each of us.
Right.
The quality of becoming aware of its existence gives you the ability to make more conscientious choices that will help guide you and the others around you to a better place. You might say the presence of a vital person vitalizes. So if you want to change the world, you can try and waste your time adjusting this and forcing that, or you can take a journey within yourself, and you will find, as I have, that the moment you change what's going on within, what's going on outside automatically follows suit.
Right.
So if you
Okay.
want to
Hold on.
yeah,
Hold on.
yeah, yeah,
So when you're saying you changed what's inside, right? Yeah, that's
correct.
when people are listening. And if they do listen to this podcast, they probably understand that. But I want to hear your perspective on that. What does it mean to go inside? What does that look like to you?
Well, that to me, for example, I grew up with a lot of anger. Why me? Why this life? Why this mother? And so, even with people who seemingly had better lives than I did, it automatically put me on this: you're the enemy, or you're just something I don't even want to look at because you have no idea what I'm going through. But who wants to live with that? Even I would imagine pessimists eventually get tired of their own stuff. And
Right.
as a Sagittarius, we
Me
are,
too.
oh, right on. Well, as you know, we are generally optimistic people, no
Right.
matter what we're thrown into. And so I wanted to find a way to live with myself, because not only was I living with a mother who was just shelling me with chaos, but then that same chaos began an inner dialogue where all my thoughts involved how I wasn't good enough, I wasn't intelligent enough, I'm a piece of crap, you know. And I just grew tired of carrying that burden. And so I started to reflect on, wait, maybe I'm not as bad as I say I am. How can I change? And again, it goes back to my mother, who spent all those years. She didn't spend money on beauty supplies or cars, or she spent her money on plants and books.
Oh, really?
And
Oh,
yeah,
interesting. Huh.
yeah. And so I could see how she was struggling, but she was getting better in some ways through what she was looking for. And she started, I recall one of her first books was uh, by Dr. Wayne Dyer, called Your Erroneous Zones.
Oh,
And I'm just a little
yes.
kid.
Oh, I love
Yeah.
it. I remember my dad's first book was a Wayne Dyer book, and it was I'll see it when I believe it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Yes.
it.
And I can still see it on his shelf. And that really, I think Wayne Dyer is still one of my biggest mentors, even though he's gone on this planet, but he still just resonates with me. And as gratitude to him for what he's taught me. I love that. That was one of her first books, and Erroneous Sounds too. Amazing.
Yeah. And so similarly, I thought, okay, well, I love my mom. I in a way, children tend to want to often imitate their parent. And I always liked imitating the best aspects of her, because she did have so many things that made her extraordinary. And one of those things was a deep seated knowledge or desire for knowledge and improvement.
Hmm.
And so I started reading, I believe one of my first books was by Tony Robbins. And I remember reading a part about a person that came to him and said, I think it's learning another language is next to impossible. And he said, well, why don't you learn the language the same way that a mentally challenged individual learns a language in that same country? And I was like, that's right. If somebody who's, perhaps mentally challenged still
Right.
knows Spanish, then, then what does that say about me? And all of these little things opened up portals to another opportunity for greater realization. So going within literally meant that I was no longer looking for solutions outside myself. I've grown tired of blaming other people outside myself. The only place you can turn to is here. It's the only place left. And so I no longer wanted to hear thoughts of destruction and chaos and turmoil. I wanted to start living and thinking the way these books were guiding me to do so. And so each book, whether it was Dr. Wayne Dyer or, oh my gosh, The Power of Positive Thinking by Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, uh,
I love that.
yeah, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, all of these were not an accident, because, and especially when I would read these books, they would reference other books. So you could bet your bottom dollar I was at the library and just absorbing. And the more I absorbed, the quieter that voice became.
Mhm.
And I'll say that voice has been with me even in recent years. But there's something different about this year where there's so much momentum towards a new reality that those voices aren't so um,
Loud.
detectable. Correct. Yeah. Yeah. And
But
in
when you say
fact,
there's so much momentum into this new reality, what does that mean?
well, for example, the sense of happiness, the sense of joy I get from rewriting this book that I put out 10 years ago, the fact that I now have a vision for what this book can do, not only for humanity, but even for myself as an artist to create another book. Uh, I, I just am filled with so much hope. And and it's a different kind of hope than I had before, because before I didn't have experience. Now I have experience, which lead and evidence that these assertions, follow your bliss, go beyond your comfort zone, are valid. And so now the reward of not knowing what the future is going to bring is the fact that I get to feel like this, feel the sense of hopefulness, the sense of, the reason that so many people fill their lives with material things because they think it'll give them this sense of belonging. And I've done it by just connecting with this almost higher self version of myself. And in fact, I even know with certainty that those voices, those little whispers that interrupted the negativity in my mind, were essentially a message from my higher self
Totally.
guiding me back
Yes.
towards my higher self.
Yes. You know what I think cool is neat about you is that you haven't had those distractions, those material distractions. So, when you look at your life and, and where you've lived and how you've lived and as a tramp, what do you call it?
Yeah, tramp.
A tramp. But yeah, like that's amazing because that's not even a focus. You're focused so internally and so on what you're going to give and show and teach to this world and help change the world because you don't have those distractions. I mean, you look at your life, I look at life now, in my 50s, looking at, gosh, I could live in a tent, nothing like that matters to me. I just want
Yeah,
to give and love and raise my daughters and make them believe that they can be, do, or have anything and that they're so powerful and those, to remove those limits that people have been plagued with, from childhood or beyond, right? But
right.
what to explain, I want to ask you a few questions just because I know you've talked about one of my favorite books is The Game of Life and How to Play It by Florence Scovel Shinn. Have you read that?
Okay. I have not yet, but I
Okay.
certainly will put
Oh,
it
I
on my.
love it. So that was like what she was written in the 1920s. But
Okay.
I've heard you say this life we're living in a game. This is a game. This is our game. This is a game. We're
Correct.
living in this game. So explain that in your the way you would explain that.
Well, I think the aim of any game is that people, well, I think that the ultimate goal is to win, but you come about winning through adversity, through having an opponent who is there to counter your every move. And so that's what life is. As I mentioned, it's not a place of good or evil. It's for good and evil to work together. So you can think of yourself as how, you know, holy I am, but you also have a dark side to you too. And in my experience, anytime I've ignored that dark side, it just grows stronger and stronger and stronger. And so I could blame that on an external devil or society, but really it's me ignoring the things that need my attention, that are calling out for my attention. So in this game of life, you, like any game, you want to set yourself up for success. You want to train, you want to have simulations of what could go wrong. You want to compete with people that are better than you. So that's because that's how you become better. And one of the things that was very deliberate in this game, or and how I chose to play it, was I made the decision a long time ago not to have children. For me, it was blatantly obvious that it's hard to bring up a child, but then when you have all this chaos and stuff, it just didn't resonate with me. And
Right.
in fact, I could see so many people who had children, but all they were doing was neglecting the very things they needed to heal within themselves before they pass it on to a new generation
Right.
to carry on the
Repeat.
tradition.
Right.
Correct. And that's what I recognized, that whatever I was going through was a repetition of what how my mother described her childhood and that childhood.
Right.
So I said, okay, there's enough kids in the world. I've also had an opportunity to live in children's shelters and foster homes. And the way that came about was whenever my mother would become so overwhelmed by just her life and this condition of DID, dissociative identity disorder, she would take me to the children's shelter
Oh,
and
wow.
leave me there for an indefinite amount of time until she
Huh.
could gather her wits about her again. It happened
Wow.
so often that I would I could sense that I was about to be taken off. And in fact,
Huh.
I would cower in the seat and only just look up at the light post and whatnot. And it would happen so routinely. I knew, okay, I know that light post. I know this sign. I know
Wow.
exactly where I'm
Oh, that
going.
makes me want to cry.
Well, it made me cry too. But at the same time, it also gave me a sense of relief because finally I was plucked out of the chaos and put into a place with other kids where we're not interested in income or status. We just want to play. We want to explore. And though I didn't see it at the time because I really wanted to get back to my mom, you know, if it's the
Right.
only source of love, you know, you want that. But it did give me a break as well. And of course, this is something I didn't recognize until much later in life. But that was the reality. It gave me an opportunity to just be a kid. Um, I didn't need the house. I didn't need the cars or any of that. I just needed these young individuals who were like me that just wanted to be free because in my sense, I felt like I was already a parent. I was already a husband,
Right.
minus the all of that to
Right.
my mother. And so, yeah, I think I may have
Yeah.
answered your question.
But like when I look at the way she raised you and thinking of you even in that car looking up, bringing me to have tears in my eyes, and how passionate I am about my raising my kids, and I wanted children. And, I wouldn't say my childhood was that great. I probably would say I raised my mom and my, I was like, I had to really rise up to the call of duty, I guess you could say. So, but I just knew in my heart that, oh, I just wanted to have these babies because I want to teach them, stop the repeat, turn off the hamster wheel and do something different. And
Hmm.
I just knew. And so in my life, I didn't meet Richard till I was 35. So having children later in life, I was, on all those Wayne Dyers and all the books that I've read, the seminars I went to, and I knew that when I had these babies, I was going to start this. I was on a
Wow.
quest to just like make them realize how powerful they were. And now they're teenagers and I see the fruit of my labor. You don't see it when they're little,
Oh,
and you're
yeah.
like teaching them gratitude and they're writing in their gratitude journals and they're like, why are we doing this, mom? And making them do all these
Oh,
things. But, now I see a 16 and 14, two, children raised with these, tools, like, oh, they're ready, like I'm ready for them to, I never said I'm not ready, but when they choose to go to college or what they choose to do after high school and they're ready to go, I know they're ready, and it's just that such a good feeling. That's probably one of the best feelings as a mom could have, when I've
hmm.
intentionally parented for these 16 years. But, when you look at life and you see the limiting beliefs that you say were on repeat, right? And
Hmm.
how you've been able to clear that and how you've been able to acknowledge that. And, I always talk about, we have in my classes that I teach, anytime someone has these limiting beliefs that, well, when I teach teenagers. So it's like those beliefs are so new, they're like barely etched in their little, souls. So explain to um, explain to all of us when you have those, it's like the whole point of being on this earth in this body right now is to grow and expand and get to another level of, of your soul, right? So when you get rid of those negative thoughts, like you were talking about, get rid of those disempowering beliefs. How give that? What? How would you do that? Because I know I love to teach that to people, and I want to know how you do, how you go about getting those thoughts that maybe start turning the volume starts going down.
I can attribute that to Gandhi's famous admonition: be the change you wish to see in the world. And first, let me commend you for the conscious choice to raise two teenage girls
Mm.
for the span of 16 years. I think you're doing an incredible job. And I can validate that because I stumbled across one of your daughter's Instagram pages, and well,
Oh,
amazing. Like, look at this beacon of light that is ready to go out and do great things in the world. And that started with you. So
thank
that
you.
is tremendous. Another thing that I will say before I go any further is, it wasn't that I don't care for children. I was a child once. It's quite great.
Right.
But I knew that whatever was going on, it was going to stop with me. And this was me as a kid thinking
Wow.
this. Like this, I saw that if another child gets born into the world, there goes the cycle again. So almost instantaneously, I didn't even care about the death of me one day, because I came to the realization that if I want my legacy to continue, all I have to do is mentor a
Hmm.
child, give them some of the tools that have helped me traverse my way through the darkness in this world. And that is how you live on forever. It's said that some people want to live to an old age and others want to live forever. And I'm the latter. and and I'm doing that the same way Christ did it, Buddha did it, Gandhi did it. You be the change you want to see in the world. So you become the example
Right.
you want to see. So if you want to see more peace, figure out how to become more peaceful. How do you become more peaceful? Stop listening to news or anything that puts you in a state of anxiety and blame. If you want to be more generous, learn to be more generous with yourself. Learn to give yourself time and space to uh, just be at peace. I will say it's interesting, though there's all this potential for programs that I see putting together collaborations with other individuals to really accelerate what I'm doing, not just in my book, but what I foresee myself doing in the future. um,
What do you see yourself doing in the future? Let's stop there. I want to hear that.
Certainly, it's funny, growing up, my mom used to have the main station she would have me watch was public broadcasting,
Yes. PBS.
PBS. And so, where Dr. Wayne Dyer would frequently give
Yes.
talks. And I recall watching him give one of these first talks I ever saw. And I said, I can do that. That's what I want to
Oh,
do. And I of course, was nervous as a kid in school. Anytime I have to read something in front of the class, my hands were shaking, the
Right.
paper was rattling. But I just, something resonated with me about what he was saying, the captivation on people's faces when he was talking. I said, I want that. And
Hmm.
so I would watch other people who would come into my life, even people I never knew personally, but had a remote connection with, whether it's through a video or a phone call. And that's been with me this whole time. Now, of course, there's responsibilities for supporting myself, keeping myself alive, making sure I'm eating a healthy diet, all these obligations that we have to ourselves. But at the same time, when you, by trimming the fat from my existence, I'm able to squeeze into opportunities that I couldn't otherwise if I were carrying a whole load of things um, on my shoulders. So did I answer your question?
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to know what you, where you are, where you do want to go. You want to speak. You
Oh
want
yeah,
to
well,
be like
I
Wayne Dyer in those PBS specials.
I have this unwavering belief that those opportunities are about to reveal themselves to me. In fact, they're always revealing themselves to me. I have, you might say, a dialogue with my environment, so that the way I live my life is almost like I'm living a poem.
Hmm.
And a poetry is not meant to be taken in a literal sense because words can't teach. Poetry, through a selective choice of words, speaks past the word into something that is transcendent of thought. And so when I'm, whether it's meditating or walking in nature, uh, I feel this sense of peace. If I were a global speaker, how would I feel? If I were traveling the world and connecting with individuals and changing lives as they change mine, how would that feel?
Mm-hmm.
So you literally create the world that you are projecting. And I know that because all the chaos that I had in my life was a projection of what was inside me.
Right.
But once I put something else inside me, I can see the timing of things working out. So
Yes.
I'm
Yeah.
just literally in a state of surrender where I'm floating down a river and just allowing it to take me to the opportunities that will present themselves, as just as this one.
Right.
I see it on Instagram. So many young people are just hell bent, like they're being shot out of a cannon to get
Right.
followers and to be in your face, and that's good too. But as the wonderful thing about growing older is you just see that hard work is not necessarily the answer.
Right.
And if you just were to take some time, and for me, I can disappear off my page anytime I want. I'm not looking for followers. I'm not asking for subscribers. Does Jennifer Aniston have to ask for subscribers? I'm
Right.
thinking from a point of view of somebody who has control of their life, and they don't have to um, grovel before people
Right.
who are so fickle to try and find. That's too much work. What is work is posting what I want to post, creating videos that put me in that creative space, that take me away from the hamster wheel
Mm-hmm.
and make me a receptacle for the divine. And so that's something that I look forward to encouraging in young people is proper planning and proper preparation create good fortune. So a lot of what you can do, you don't have to do on camera. You don't have to put it out there. I think in my own experience, spending time with myself, dealing with all the things and obligations that I need to deal with, figuring out how to streamline my life rather than constantly putting my energy out there and depleting myself has been paramount to my development. Take care of your side of the street first.
Right. Yes, for sure. Um, so you're just a deep thinker. When I listen to your videos, you know, you are a philosopher, like And people are all understanding that now at this minute of our conversation. But I want to understand, like, I look at you as me. Like, I know everything's one. When I go out in nature and I'm out there every day with my dogs, on our 1 hour journey, I look at the trees now. I mean, I've expanded my life in the last, I look back 6 months ago. I'm completely different. I look back, a month ago, I'm different today than I was. The conversations that I have now on this podcast are way, I don't even think I could go back and listen to it like 6 months ago. It would be so different in my, who I am. But, when you see the trees and you see the birds, especially in Hawaii. But when I'm here in San Diego and I'm walking this morning and I'm seeing the birds in the trees, and I'm really focusing, I see the crow with the stick in his mouth, like where they're going, and I'm so open and like so present. And I know they are a reflection of me. And I'm looking at it like we're all one. This is all, every experience that I have and what you have is in me, is together is me. A reflection of me is in you, right?
Correct.
Let's hear your take on that.
I would say that the human spirit has a couple of qualities, one being the projecting power, where we are able to, we are this light that can project outward. And now if there's nothing to reflect back to you, it'll just keep going outward. So now the second power we have is reflecting power. You project out, and what you're seeing out there is a reflection of inner projections. The third power the spirit has is the revealing power. What is this reflection revealing about myself from which the projection is coming from? And that's how we learn. People think, oh, this so-and-so is making my life total chaos. Well, what is it that I'm projecting outward that is attracting that to me?
Right.
And so, yeah, that really resonated with me. Projecting, reflecting, and revealing. And what it is revealing is our own divinity. You can see God as something out there. And you can see Jesus and all the sentiments about how he suffered as, well, that happened to him. But what Joseph Campbell helped me recognize is that all the religions in the world contain a constellation of metaphors that speak past the metaphor. It's not that Christ suffered and was born, or died and was reborn, but what are you suffering for? What are you dying to so that you can be reborn? These are talking about us because they are revealing to us a simple fact that we are the second coming. And that to me is in Catholicism and even in Christianity, there is this second birth. And the way that comes about is there's this series of energy centers in the body known as chakras or wheels. And you might say the three first centers are located in the pelvic basin. They have to do with our animal self. Our connection to the animal kingdom. Animals fight for their place in the world. They have hunger, so they're looking to feed, and they're looking to conquer the environment around them. It isn't until you get to the fourth chakra, which is at the level of the heart. It's said that Jesus wore his heart on his sleeve. Well, the sleeve is at the fourth chakra, and the heart is the organ of opening up to another, of compassion. It takes in this source of blood and shares it with the whole body. It doesn't hoard most of it and say, you can get this and you can get that, because there's a recognition that without sharing, the whole totality collapses. And in fact, it has a rhythmic timing that you don't have to think about, because you are in the rhythm of harmony. And when you start to recognize that, people say, well, I'm one with the universe. And well, what is the universe? The universe is comprised of five primary components: oxygen, helium, carbon, nitrogen, and there's one more.
Okay.
But essentially,
I trust you. I believe you.
yeah. So, but in the human body, those are the exact same five components that exist in us. So automatically we are connected. We have a link, a religio, which is the root, meaning linking to the greater cosmos. So when you say that I and you are in some sense one, it is truly, we're not even, it's not just you and I, but we're one with the rabbits, the birds, as you say, the planet. And so we are a small organism functioning in terms of a larger organism. And you can, instead of thinking that you came here from someplace else, we are a product of our mother, which is this earth, which brings about all life. So you could say that this is the voice of the earth. These are the eyes of the earth. These are the ears of the earth. And what else? So that's one of the things that I'm charged to do, is to bring about an alternative point of view, not to discredit what Christianity or any of these religions do, because they do serve as a guiding principle for countless people in the world. They serve to feed the masses. All I'm saying is just change your perspective a few degrees this way and see what that does for you. See if it clicks. Make yourself your own authority. Don't take my word for it, or yours, or Joseph Campbell's, or Wayne Dyer's. Put in the work. Just suspend what you believe for a moment and really just allow, even if it's an inner voice, to come in, and you'll see your life change in miraculous ways the way that I do, which is why I'm fearless in the unknown of which I'm about to do, because I've been supported the entire time. And I really feel a momentum, is the best way I can describe it, of a new earth coming about. And I, and people like you, your daughters, everyone else who's charged with this energy, is coming together. And sure, there are things that we can focus on in the world that are not great, whatnot. But one of the other individuals you might say I enjoy and find resonance with is Abraham and Esther Hicks.
Oh, me too.
They're
I
always
raised
saying,
my girls on that teaching. And we met her, by the way.
oh
We
my
met her right
gosh,
here at one of the malls, because she has a house here. And I've
fabulous.
taught him that. I mean, you're tapped in, tuned in, turned on every day. And, I mean, I just, yeah, that's really been one of my biggest teachers too. I love it.
Yeah. Well,
Continue.
there's momentum involved in that as well. She says, just give yourself how can you make your situation give yourself a little bit of relief? My life sucks. What's the relief in that? Well, I'm still alive.
Right.
And then that takes you to, I have oxygen to breathe. I don't have bullets whizzing by my head, and I wasn't kidnapped as a child to fight wars in the Congo. Uh, and that really just it. And of course, it takes practice. You might say, "My life sucks." Well, at least you're alive. Yeah, but what kind of life is that?
Right.
You're gonna get pushback. But the more you just keep introducing this, the best you can do is lean toward the light. There's an experiment. This is something that is intrinsic in I would say flora, if not all life forms. You can take an ordinary house plant that's by the light and turn it away from the light. And what you will find that over time, even all the leaves that are turned away from the light will eventually turn back toward the light.
Right.
This heliotropism is what it's called. And that is nature's way of saying, always move towards the light. Towards darkness is death, which is also necessary. But I have this sort of not companionship, but a deep friendship with the concept of death.
Oh, good. Tell me
Because,
that. I want to hear
well,
that.
death comes for us all, but it's not an agent of evil. It's necessary in order for new life to come forth. And so the only real companion either any of us have in this life is death, who constantly walks by our side, protects us from other things that could take us out before our time. Because I think we do make contracts in the beyond and come here to realize that in this meat suit that has sensory and things that a spirit who's just everything all at once doesn't have the capacity to grow from and learn from. So how do you do it? You put yourself in a finite, you're infinite, putting yourself in a finite thing and then taking that experience to make the infinite even more infinite.
Right.
So death is absolutely necessary so that there may be new life. And when you start making peace with those concepts and ideas that were once thought to be evil in some way, like one of my favorite stories that Joseph Campbell told me of, or I heard from him, was the story of Iblis, which is the Muslim name for Satan. And, how was Satan kicked out of heaven? Well, in the Christian tradition, it is said that when man created the world, he created the angels and told them to bow to none other than himself. Then he created man, who God regarded as a higher creature, and told the angels to bow to man. And in the Christian tradition, it is the egotism of Satan. He would not bow to man. But in the Muslim tradition, Iblis could not bow to man because of his love for God. He could only bow to God. And
Hmm.
so God says, get out of my sight. Now, the worst shades of hell can be said that it's the absence of the beloved, of which you've become separate. And so that transforms this evil into a love. And I think that story is so much more compassionate than there's this force in the world and it's after you, and we're the only good, and it's separating yourself from
Right. Huh.
that.
Huh.
So
Oh,
stuff like that has the power to transform. I mean,
right.
it's doing it to me, and
I know.
yeah. So
Huh. I
there you
love
go.
that.
It's funny. When I was growing up, my mom had this uncanny ability to like go through all of this chaos that this torment would put her and myself through, and then she'd be like, "We gotta like plant the corn, and we gotta do this." So she would just switch off, and then expect me to just switch into this other state of mind.
Right.
So every time I do something like that, I can't help but think of her, because sure, I can feel vulnerable and I can allow it to come through. But at the same time, I got a podcast to talk about.
Funny.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. This has been so fun and so fast. And I was looking so forward to talking to you today. Thank you so much for being here. And why don't you give everybody like where they can find you, all that stuff?
I'm quite simple in that I can be found on Instagram at the Wanderer Philosopher. And that is the word the underscore Wanderer Philosopher. I am currently working on a website for the re-release of my book. And for now, though, any questions, the I would say Instagram is the way to go. I also have a YouTube channel. I don't even recall the name for it.
Oh, funny. Just put your name in,
Yeah,
Alexander
Demetrius,
Demetrius.
correct. And yeah, you'll
Last
find
words of
me.
wisdom. Let me hear your last words of wisdom. What comes through?
Don't be afraid to fail and look foolish. I would say the best things that ever came to me in my life were the fact that I was willing to fall down. But you fall down 7 times, you get up 8.
Right. Love it. And on that note, we are complete. Thank you so much. Loved it. Loved it.
Thank you.